you guys are doing well. Just like last week, I thought this week I would have somebody that I know on that you guys don't. Although you guys at least met my friend Justin. There he
Hello.
is. He came into the classroom one day, I don't know, first semester, something like that, said hey to everyone, or second semester, I don't remember. But he came in, hung out for a day. Justin and we met in college. We have been very good friends ever since. And it is common for us to talk about things that we read. So it seemed like a nice fit to have Justin come on and talk to you guys or with you guys or with me to you guys about something that we read. This week, I'm actually trying to let everyone that I have come talk on one of these videos pick the reading for us this week. So Justin actually picked out letters two or letters from? Letters two?
There's two.
Letters to an Astrophysicist. He picked that chapter of that book out, and I loved it. So I'm glad we had the chance to read it because I don't think I would have ever had you read that otherwise. So, real quick before we get in there, let me pop the screen open. And I just want to show you guys the assignment one more time. It's the one dated this week. Hopefully you've read and commented to answer questions. And then tomorrow you're replying to people. And then we'll have something to do with this video as well. The questions this week are tacked on to the bottom of the reading. There we go. And so Justin and I will just kind of go over these questions a little bit, chat about the reading, and hopefully you'll get a good discussion out of it. I'm going to open this Dr. Pepper with cream soda. Try it, see how it goes. And that is delightful. All right, Justin, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well. Let's talk about some science.
Let's do this. All right, so I put the intro in telling you guys that it was kind of what the book was about and whatnot. So hopefully you guys gave that a read before you read it. And then Justin picked one that had some good challenging vocab in it. So I tried to break down any word that I felt like would be somewhat confusing. So hopefully that helped. But then as we kind of get into it, the first thing that I felt like was worth considering was the point of the question that was asked. So when you read that question, Justin, for the first time, or when you read it last time, I guess it doesn't matter, what jumped out to you about that question being asked?
Well, I think that something that it kind of reminded me of is this old kind of saying that says something we were so busy figuring out we can that we never decided if we should or not. And that's kind of what his question reminded me as far as science goes. Maybe he sits there and is kind of thinking like, well, we had all this great scientific progress in our lives, but we never decided or thought about whether or not it was going to harm anything in the process.
It reminds, well, so every time I hear that saying, I always think of Jurassic Park with Dr. Ian Malcolm. But it is a good point that I think just as people, science completely detached. Like we're always so interested in trying to figure out what we can do. Like, if you think of like even playing basketball, where you keep stepping back, I wonder if I can hit this shot. I wonder if I can hit it from half court, we're always so interested in pushing forward and doing something that we've never done before, or maybe that's never been done before. And it's, I think, human nature to not consider always the outcome of that, especially on people around us. And I think it's a good question. I had never had this question come up, thinking about, like, I get in my car and drive and it's extremely convenient. And I never thought about, would the world be better if I didn't have a car? No, cars never were invented. I think that was a really good perspective, which we'll get to how you feel about that in a minute. What was our second question? Do you have them printed out? I don't remember.
I do.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. So how does Neil, Mr. Tyson, I'm going to call him Mr. Tyson because he's a professional, Dr. Tyson probably, how does he use facts and real examples to argue his point? So was there a fact or a real example that you really liked that you grabbed onto to kind of tout the use of science?
Well, yeah. I think the biggest one that kind of jumped out to me is talking about food shortage.
Yeah.
Because really, it's something that we don't think about a lot. And especially in this country, you can go and see that we waste a whole lot of food. And that's something that, fortunately for us, I guess, the science has got us to that point where food gets everywhere to people. There's an abundance of it available to you. And without that, you know, in a bad season where a drought knocked out half of the country of food supply, without science, maybe we'd all be starving. Uh, so I think that it's been a good thing to use that as an example, because that's a very positive thing that's come from science.
I think you're right, and the scale of it too. Like we don't. I I sometimes think about, especially because of where I mean, we both grew up in the country, so you drive by and see cornfields or soybean fields or whatever all the time, and to think of like how large those fields are and how many people they have to service, even though like a lot of the fields around here are serviced to animals. Like we grow mostly animal food so that like the things that we eat can eat that. But a ton of, just to make like the Cheez-Its at Walmart, it's a ton of resources, and yeah, you go to any Walmart and there are Cheez-Its everywhere. I thought it was interesting too how he used really good facts to back that up, and I think the food shortage was probably his strongest one, and it also was useful in the kind of dichotomy set up between science and politics, where he talks about like most of the time science is controlled by someone else. And if you think of like the nuclear bomb, we
Hmm.
made the nuclear bomb because politicians and military figures wanted a weapon, not because we were just doing research on nuclear power or anything out of that, right? There was an interest in having that scientific leap forward. And I think it's an interesting point that he made to say it's almost unfair to qualify science as good or evil when there's always someone controlling the science, which I also don't think I ever would have really thought of before, though it makes really good sense. Um, yeah,
I was just gonna say that's. I mean, he makes the point in his second sentence of his rebuttal to the letter, where he's basically like, "What actually matters is that science is not inherently good or bad. It's just a base knowledge of how the natural world works." Um, and I think that's probably the strongest thing that he can really say about science is it's not good or bad. It's how we use it
right. Yeah,
that
absolutely. I mean,
that way.
you're talking about trying to put morals on something that is just exploration,
Right.
and I don't think exploration has a conscience. I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, I don't I can't think of anything I've done to figure out if I could do it. I don't think I could categorize any of those things as having an agenda. Like I wanted to know when I was in high school, I wanted to know if I could take an AP English class and pass it. So I knew whether I could become an English teacher. That wasn't me thinking I would do good and trying to change the world or do bad and assigning too much homework or something. But like it was just, could I do it? And I think yeah, I think that's a good point. Let's see. Work that. I tell you, this annotation thing. Um, so the third question I ask, do you think he's effective in validating the worth of science, which is to say, does his argument work? And we spent some time in class, to give you, Justin, context on this, we spent some time in class close to the shutdown, starting to evaluate arguments. How do people make their point?
Hmm.
And is the point they make really effective when it comes to argumentative writing? So do you feel like how he approached giving science its worth, saying that it was worth having science, do you think he did a good job?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He really lays out quite a succinct but very good argument. I mean, when you go to the very beginning, he kind of talks about how with the cyanobacteria and things changing the atmosphere of the Earth, he kind of talks about natural occurring phenomena that have maybe changed the world for the worse. In instance, if you were an anaerobic bacteria, that's probably not a good time to be killed.
Right.
So he gives kind of those normal things, or locusts or cicadas that come in and just desiccate crops and all this stuff. So he starts off giving examples of natural occurring phenomenon that don't create good change in the world. Then he talks about the one big negative that Mr. Ab was talking about, which is climate change. And he talks about, yeah, hey, we've made the climate change a problem, but there's still time. We can fix it. But if we fix it, it's going to be with science.
Yeah.
It's not going to be anything else. And then he gives, then he goes on to give examples of pro science things that have happened
Yeah.
throughout the world.
I think he does a nice job of also technically admitting that science causes some problems.
Yep.
But almost in the way that he does it, I mean, science has the power to solve the problems it occasionally creates. He's almost discrediting those problems as soon as he admits that they exist.
Yep.
And I think that goes back to science can't be good or evil. But science can just, sometimes things have side effects, and it just happens. It happens with everything you do. So science can solve the problems that it sometimes, accidentally makes. That doesn't mean that it's bad by doing that, right? And I think the end of that too, and I maintain that without the progress of science, I today would be someone's slave, and half the world would have not survived past age 5. Not only that, 70% of who did survive would be hard at work on farms, barely making enough food for the growing population. That's not him giving a statistical merit to science, but an actual societal merit, right? That because of the advent of farming technology, we didn't need the quote unquote slave labor or whatever. I mean, like, there's a real actual societal benefit to it. Tons of people can live because of medicine, can survive and stay alive because of medicine, and that's a scientific advancement. And then we have the choice to do things like make these videos because we're not farmers, because we have things like tractors and genetically engineered crops that can grow in like a half the life cycle that corn used to grow in. Like, there's real actual societal benefits, not just things that can be explained away with math, which I thought was a really interesting and effective way to kind of close it out. So then the last thing that I ask is, in 3 to 5 sentences, what do you think? Does science cause more harm than good? I think it's clear that we're both on the same boat on that we feel like science actually serves its purpose.
Right.
That it's very useful to have people studying anything scientific to try to push it forward. I think it's pretty clear where we land on that. So, but if I were doing this assignment, I would still articulate that in 3 to 5 sentences. Justin, do you have anything you want to throw in there about this here reading?
Yeah, I mean, I think what he is trying to get across is that science has affected every second of our life, modern life especially, and even the smallest things in your life can be scientific or can be attributed to science. Even the simple act of whacking a nail with a hammer. There's metallurgy that went into making the hammer and putting it together and learning to use tools and all this stuff. So something as simple as that is actually a great scientific achievement. And so don't take that for granted, and look around and see everything and realize, like, science is all around us, and it's incredibly, incredibly important.
There's not one type of science to be limited to either. So if you start to really think about things that you've enjoyed in science classes that you've taken, or science stuff that you've read, that science could be, watching how bugs interact with plants, or it could be figuring out how to construct a sneaker so that it looks good and also feels good, right? Or that it grips a basketball court as effectively as possible. I mean, there's just limitless avenues and applications for what we define as science, which I think is also what's so wonderful about that. You know, like
Yeah.
he's an astrophysicist. You know, I mean I mean that's which is something that I would never have even known existed. 20 years ago in my life.
Yeah.
Uh, where you're studying just how the elements of space interact, or what's in space, or how space actually works, and there's unlimited avenues of science on the actual planet, and then you can get off of it too, which is kind of cool. Well, Justin, thank you for picking such a great reading.
You bet.
And I
Thank you.
guarantee if Justin was a student in my class, he would have posted his thoughts as a comment on this discussion board. And then we would be replying to his comments. And I know that because we took a class where I think we
That's
had to
right.
do that.
Yep, I believe so.
There it is. Look at that. Anyway, guys, enjoy the reading. Please contact me with questions. And thank you one more time, Justin, for coming around.